And with that, I'd like to welcome James to the stage to start this Solve section off.
Well, that's a young picture. Blimey. What I want to do is just reflect a little bit on what we've heard, but what that means when you bring it together and execute that vision, what it means for people as well, how we think about that in our businesses, because I think that's a really important piece that we need to consider when we bring things to fruition. So, typical James style, I'm going to go completely left field. There was a problem in the world, which was the problem we've all faced, and many of you probably faced it coming here, of waiting for taxis. You remember back in the days where you just sat in a queue, or you sat at home, you rang a taxi, and you have no idea what's going on. And that problem, there was an idea that came to someone while watching the movie. I think it was Goldfinger or something. One of the James Bond movies there, it's a DB9. A little blue dot on that map was tracking the villain in that movie. And a person sitting there, what was his name? Michael Garrett, I can't remember. The problem and the idea came together to develop a platform, which obviously turned into Uber. Now, what was really interesting about that platform, that's a digital platform like we've been talking about, okay? So we're going to digitize that process. We're going to take away the problem of queuing, right? We're going to take an idea, we're going to create innovation, which is what that is, right? Idea, commercial, innovation. But, you know, what really was solved there was not a sort of technology problem. It's very convenient to have it on your phone. What he solved was the fact that on that platform, you've got a little dot that represents the car, and it tells you when that taxi is arriving. And what that does is it takes anxiety away from you. That is actually a psychological innovation. So we're using technology to solve a psychological problem. And so that's the people at the heart of that are really important, okay? So I want you to think about that as we go through what I'm just about to talk about. And there's probably not a hope bit that I'll get through to it'll be a red light, definitely. The process of drilling is a cyclical process, okay? We're drilling a hole not to drill a hole, but we're drilling a hole to take a sample. That's what we're doing. We're sampling the subsurface. And Bo, you showed some really nice pictures of sand being recovered. Beautiful, right? And so we're doing that. We're doing that to then measure parameters in those samples, some kind of geosensing. I kind of boil it down to 4 or 5 things. That's all you need. It can't be that hard. But we don't want to overwhelm the geologist then with a tsunami of data. We want to turn that data into information, because ultimately we need information to support some kind of decision. What do I do? What do I do? Do I keep drilling? Do I move my my drill hole to another place? Do I stop my program? Actually, the most valuable decision anyone can make actually is to walk away from a project that's not going to give you the result. So that whole capture, analyze, solve, and the problem in our industry is that cycle takes too long to go around, and we need to bring technology to bear on that problem to digitize that problem, make it faster, make it more effective, and give us higher confidence as we move around it. And that's a drilling cycle. When you move on into an operation, you actually create a really complicated ecosystem of data and decisions. And you can see my incredibly high-skilled drawing abilities. But you can see that we're connecting drill rigs, we're connecting core farms, we're connecting information there in the office, 3D models, that kind of stuff, the stuff you need for decisions. And you can see information flow around that ecosystem. It's a really complicated ecosystem. There's a whole bunch of decisions that come out of that. And it could be, do I keep drilling? Do I change my process? Do I walk away? How do I inform my investors 1 week earlier than I could do otherwise? That's a really tangible impact on doing things. So it's a really complicated system. And our people are in the middle of that complicated system trying to manage it. And that creates a lot of anxiety. And if you think about what we're trying to do here, and so just take the example of structural geology, because who doesn't love a good stereo net? If you just take the example of structural geology here, what are we actually trying to solve here? We're trying to solve the problem of the geologist sat behind a computer, and he's faced with a decision, right? You can live in the world on the left, where I've got my data with a load of error in it, the dots are spread out, I've got problems, I've got logging problems, all those things that Sarah talked about earlier, all those problems coming through, that aggregation of error. And I've now got to try and make sense of that. I've got to turn that into information. I've got to make a decision. Or I can live on the right-hand side and have that far better quality data presented to me, captured, QA'd, delivered very effectively. And now I've got data I can really do something with very quickly, with confidence, without that anxiety. And so I think there's a piece here where the problem we're trying to solve is the problem of the person having to do something with that data at the end of the day. And of course, once you start to do that properly, as Ryan showed in his master slide, I'm now going to call it Ryan, which is everything on one slide. But you can see that we can start to bring all those data together and give people the ability to really get value out of bringing multiple data streams together that we haven't been able to do before. So if you just go back to thinking about structural geology, because I think this is a really important point, right? We're solving a problem of someone looking at a stereo net. But to do that, you've got to go all the way back down the chain and think about how you're starting with doing that. So the starting point is actually, how am I collecting the best quality sample? Let's just start there. So actually selling good structural geology to people in a office on a site involves changing a fluid program because we're not getting the best quality sample. And I think a lot of geologists don't make that connection. I think we need to kind of think about that connection more. And so you can see there some pictures. You've got the IMDEX there being used. So how do we start to bring digital systems together to improve or reduce error and improve the quality of the information? The team of geologists at Aberdeen Minerals there. Using a digital structural logging device, the LoggerX. So again, kind of providing that digital data capture, that QA/QC right at the point of data capture. So you've got to bring all of that together with the digital piece, with the data being able to flow from all of those sources there into a system and then back down into the stereo net. But you've got to bring all of that together to be able to give someone the high quality stereo net to look at and make decisions. And so if you think about what that means for people, so we're going to go back to the Uber problem. Now, what does it now mean for people? So if you're the drilling supervisor, I've now got the digital structural geology system in place, okay? And I'm the drilling supervisor. What does that mean for me? Well, it means that I can walk up to the rig and I don't have to worry. So they're using the IMDEX. I don't have to worry now that my team is not putting the mark on correct. Because if they don't put the mark on correct, I then get hauled into someone's meeting office on a Monday morning and have things torn off me because I'm not delivering the best quality data. So now as a drilling supervisor, I feel happier because I've got systems in place to improve what happens. And then, we've heard some great stories there about, the utilization of the Crux dashboards and the Crux data and how we can make decisions to help improve productivity. It's a win-win for everyone. So as a drilling supervisor, you bring these systems in, it actually improves his anxiety levels. So the project Geo, so he walks in the morning, gets a cup of coffee first, important, sits down at the computer and looks at a shift report from last night that tells him about the quality of the core orientations that were done, and various other data sets that are coming in, maybe through the Crux dashboard, and now has an idea of how they're going to approach with the team that day's geological logging. And so instead of coming across problems as you're logging, you've got that up front. You can make decisions about how you tackle that day's work. You do that over a coffee for 5 minutes, makes a big impact on what you've done that day coming, okay? And then the exploration manager, he then can sit there and consume all of these different data streams. Now, Yeah, that's an IGAS shot. Now, this is actually, for those that know him, that's Nick Oliver on the right-hand side. Stood somewhere in the middle of Chile, I think. And Nick's one of the few people where his brain seems to cope with multi-dimensional space in IGAS. So there's some IGAS screenshots there showing different shapes of symbols, different colors, and that's all representing a whole bunch of different data that's been fused together in IGAS, right? But, you know, if you've got the systems in place to deliver the data in the right way, we can start to play around with that data. And that exploration manager, if they're like Nick, they'll do it on IGAS. But then once they've got ideas about what's going on, they can then start to kind of work on deploying that into platforms like we saw with the data rock technology, where you can start to scale that now, scale those ideas, scale that brain, and make it something that can deploy across an operation. So you've got to fix everything right from the very first piece all the way through to give that piece here, what was Dave's phrase, you got core, you're happy or something, excited, maybe that's what it was. And it's no core, no fun. Thank you, Dave. I'll learn it. And that's really what we're talking about here. The other really important thing here is that there's a piece here that we have to help people connect the analytics to the rocks. Because at the end of the day, it's about the rocks. They have to find the meaning in the rocks from that information. And so here's just a picture of, this is a great example as well of what, I can say this because I'm a geologist, right, of what geologists do. So we give people these wonderful digital systems, and then they print it out on A0 plotter paper and walk down the core. It's fantastic. But it allows people to connect, right? And so there's some gamma data from a driller deployed gamma tool. It's come through, it's QA, QC'd, it's delivered in a wavelet tessellation, which is an automated boundary picking system. And then the team of geologists then can take that and start to think about, what does that mean for my rocks? You've got to provide that connection to the rocks. You've got to get the information into meaning on the rocks. And at that point, the digital system means something to everyone and they get it. And that is value. Okay, so part of this story here is to talk about how we go from the cost of implementing something and actually show the value. And the value there is in happy geologists, actually. And the happiest geologist at the front is actually our IMDEX geoscientist in a core shed up in northern Sweden, I think. So, you know, it definitely comes back to this, right? Is that at some point the rocks tell a story, and we need to enable people to read that story a lot easier and a lot more effectively and a lot more efficiently. But we've got to connect the digital outcomes with the meaning. So when I look at kind of cost to value piece here, and people worry about cost, but it's very hard to kind of capture value. But I want people to kind of take away from here that there's probably two value pieces here, and this is stuff I had in my head. You could probably come up with more bullet points here. But it's really important to think about the fact that your impact on a person, when you implement a system, you impact on a person. There's both productivity factors, so yes, it's safer, it's faster, it's better quality data, but there are psychological value factors as well. And we need to learn to kind of recognize the psychological value factors, because they're the things that can make the innovation work for us. And Uber was a good example of that. Okay. So if we come back, the other really important point here is if we come back to this complex ecosystem that we're dealing with, when you start to implement these systems in every point in that process, so the drill rig, the core farm, the office, the impact of the digital system or the digital ecosystem has different costs in different places. It has different values in different places as well. And so it could be that there's a lot of cost on the drill rig and a little bit of value, and a lot of value in the core shed and a little bit of cost, right? So one of the things we're learning is that to do this properly, because you've got a drilling contractor, maybe a service logging contractor, you've got an asset owner in the middle of this as well. To do this properly, to really bring the technology system to bear properly, we have to look at partnerships. And the technology providers have to be partners in that ecosystem right from day one to make this work. And that partnership piece is really important, again, to extract the value across all of those different node points. And there's some work being done at MDRU. I know Dave's involved in this, and probably some others in the audience, some work being done at MDRU to also then start to look at how we attach cost and value models to turn it into language. There's NPV language here, but turn it into the kind of language that the CFO will also understand. And that's another really important. I attended a short course on Monday, which was about capital markets for geologists and engineers. And what was really clear was we're not very good at telling stories to different audiences, to our different stakeholders. And so this is a piece of work here to kind of look at how do we tell that to the finance stakeholders of what we're trying to do. So technology is a value, not a cost, and products help, but system-wide solutions are where we really create value. A product in isolation is great, but the system-wide solutions are where we really leverage the value. And costs can be complex to understand in that system. So we need to kind of look at these kind of partnership kind of systems. So, being there on day one, working as a partner across all of those stakeholders to make sure we leverage the value and be able to tell that story in the right way. And then the iGeologist, trademark that one. iGeologist. What does the iGeologist look like? The future geologist? Because I think we do need geologists. It's probably a whole story around artificial general intelligence and what that's going to do, but that's down the track. But iGeologists, what are they going to be? They're going to be technology partners. So the geologist needs to learn to work alongside the technology and use it as a partner in what they're doing. We heard that about the computer vision stuff. We're still going to need that extra piece that comes out of here, the training, the expertise, the brain, but they've got to be partnering with the technology. And the productivity and psychological value factors, we've got to look at both of them because they're both equally as important, not just productivity. So, thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that, James. That was an excellent talk. I think really ties together a lot of these value pieces.